Hello and welcome in to the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from Austin, Texas is senior writer Mike Craven. And Craven, kind of a sleepy week two around the nation, but we had two bangers of games in the state of Texas, non-conference interstate rivalries. You want to start off with Baylor, SMU, start off in the P4, and then we'll talk about Texas State, UTSA?
Yeah, we can go Old Southwest Conference shootout.
I love that. It lived up to a shootout of the Old Southwest Conference. Baylor over SMU 48-45 in double overtime. Baylor comes back from a 38-24 deficit, 8:28 left in the game. They never led until the first possession of double overtime. And I know we're biased here at Dave Campbell's, Craven, but seeing these two teams, Big 12 ACC, non-conference, interstate rivalry matchup in Texas, when you look around the rest of the league and it's like Miami playing Bethune-Cookman and Alabama playing Louisiana Monroe. And I know they had big games, primetime games last week, but so did Baylor, with Auburn. I think neither team lost anything by playing this game because it was just a really good football game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And if TCU doesn't want to play SMU every year, maybe SMU and Baylor can renew this rivalry because it was a tremendous game. And I agree with you that neither team lost, but that's because Baylor won.
True. If that score that was with 8:28 left in the fourth had held up, Baylor would have lost this game big time.
I was in the UTSA press box, so the G.J. Kinney, Jeff Traylor, there was jokes already flying of winner of this game is the next Baylor coach, right? By other media people in there. Because, as we were watching in the press box, as UTSA was about to kick, they're down 14 in the fourth quarter. The defense really bad again, like they were against Auburn. Gave up 2 75-yard touchdown passes, including one on the first play. But Sawyer Robertson and that Baylor offense, just absolutely incredible. I put in my 3 thoughts after the game that I wrote in the press box, like in Billy Madison, where they're doing the trivia and Steve Buscemi's character comes in there and kind of saves the day. And Adam Sandler's like, man, I'm glad I called that guy. I can only imagine that's how Dave Aranda feels with Jake Spavital. Like that hire heading into 2024 saved his job last year. And it looks like it's on its way to possibly keeping his job at the end of 2025. A huge win for the Bears, a disappointing win for SMU that they're going to kick themselves over. But they lost nothing losing to BYU last year in non-con. If they go run the table, beat Clemson, beat Miami, get back into the ACC championship, this will just be a blip on the radar, but an absolute season saver. At least it feels like it for Baylor.
The only defender who could stop Kevin Jennings yesterday was that ref who tripped him as he was scrambling. I mean, he didn't have an incompletion until the third quarter. The Bears are now dead last in the Big 12, allowing 41.5 points per game, 436.5 total yards of offense. But like you mentioned, Craven, Baylor's averaging 43 points and 542 yards of total offense. And Sawyer Robertson, check out his last 3 games. LSU, he was 30 for 51 for 445 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Auburn was 27 to 48, 419 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. SMU was 34 for 50, 440 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. I guess the question is Baylor's defense going to figure it out, or is Baylor going to have to outscore? Is Sawyer Robertson going to have to put up 400 yards every single game?
Yeah, Sawyer's averaging 429.5 passing yards per game. Next, number 2 in the nation is 361. He's absolutely putting up video game numbers, and I guess it feels like this is how it's going to have to be. SMU's offense is really good, and Auburn's offense presented a unique look that I don't think Baylor's going to see much in the Big 12. Auburn's a lot bigger. I think they could run the ball a little bit better than a lot of the Big 12 teams. But it does feel like the recipe for the Bears is going to have to be shootout. It's going to have to be Sawyer Robertson putting the cape on. Bryson Washington also had a solid game to provide the balance. But with those wide receivers, with that tight end when he's healthy, hopefully Michael Trigg's fine, moving forward. That Baylor offense is electric, is exciting, and I think they're going to have to score 30-plus a game for Baylor to reach its goals.
Why is the defense so bad right now?
It's a great question. I won't pretend to be smart enough to know everything. I imagine it's mostly personnel. which is on the coaching staff as well. But I just don't think they're talented enough, especially in the secondary. And when you're that much of a liability in coverage, then what do you do to stop the run? And so it's a pick your poison thing. And you saw against Auburn, they stayed in quarters, they stayed in cover 2, and it was because they were so scared that if they committed any more players to the box, that they were just going to get bombed over the top. And I guess it's like 1,000 paper cuts over one bullet hole type of situation. Mm-hmm. Like, SMU, you saw what happened in SMU was just torching them. 75-yard touchdown. I think their thought is we have to play, deep zone, cover 3 quarters, like keep everything in front of us and just hope teams make mistakes. And honestly, just hope our offense can outscore them. But I just think they're really bad in the secondary. I think they're okay in the front 6 for a Big 12 football team. But I just think that the depth isn't there and they're just not good enough in the back end.
And you don't get the personnel excuse when you're in years. Is this 6?
Yeah.
The Dave Aranda era? Well, okay, maybe it's 2 years since they started paying players. So it's going to take another couple years to get his guys in that he can pay.
Whether it's personnel, whether it's schematic, whether it's a combination of the two, whether it's like other forces, there's been some injuries as well that haven't helped. No matter what, it's on Aranda. Like it starts with Aranda. It's his side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And it's not his side of the ball that's carrying Baylor. It did in 2021 when they won the Big 12 championship. But every other year when Baylor's had success, it's mostly been because of the offense that's continuing again in year 6. Here would be my long-term issue, right? Is like Spavital's offense is so good, he's going to go get a different job.
Yes.
He's either going to become a head coach again, or he'll go be an OC at, whatever, Oregon when Will Stein goes and gets a head coaching job. And so if you're sticking with Aranda, if Aranda is your head coach for the long term, he's in year 6 and you see him in year 7, year 8, year 9, are you just dependent on him hitting at OC over and over again? Because it just doesn't feel like the defense is ever going to be an elite unit.
And right now, I think you are dependent on him hitting on OC over and over again, because I know everyone got hyped up about that Ross Dellinger piece that came out in Yahoo Sports before the season about how Dave Aranda was back in the lab and realized his defense had gone stale over the last 5 years. But right now, it almost looks worse than last year, too. And maybe that's because Auburn and SMU are just insane offenses. And maybe it's because their personnel, like you're talking about, is not up to snuff. But the good news for Baylor is that their next upcoming schedule has got some time for them to reset a little bit. This is a case in point of why it's pointless to judge how hard a Big 12 schedule is in preseason, because they got Arizona State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State, which looked so daunting 2 weeks ago. And now it's like Arizona State lost to Mississippi State and Blake Shapen 24-20, and they were 2-10 last year. Oklahoma State had the worst loss since 1907 this week in a 69-3 thrashing against Oregon. And then Kansas State lost to Army as a 3-score favorite. And that was a week after they needed a last-second touchdown to beat North Dakota, and not the good North Dakota, by the way.
Yeah, Baylor could easily be 4-1 at the end of that run, could easily go to the Big 12 championship game. I think we both picked them to go over in the team totals and have a big season. We've been talking about Baylor as a contender for 6 or 7 months. It's just not going to be because of their defense. Like they're 132nd in scoring defense so far of the year. Like they're giving up 41.5 points a game.
Gross.
It's just not good on that side of the ball. And if let's say like Aranda was the offensive coordinator or the offensive guy and he was the head coach, and you're scoring this many points a game and you have this type of offense and the defense isn't good. Well, after the year, you can just go fix that other thing and keep your head coach. But like, let's say Baylor does go to the Big 12 championship game and the offense does outscore everybody. And even the defense improves a little bit and gives up 28 points a game, 30 points a game. What happens next? Like that would be scary to me as a Baylor fan. But you don't have to worry about the wheels falling off right away, because that type of win can propel you. Like that type of win can galvanize a locker room and can cause a run. And I don't think Baylor's bad. I think Baylor's going to be a good football team that's in contention in late October and in November. I just think it's going to have to look a lot like the win against SMU. And I don't know. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence for the like long-term ability of the staff. And then on the SMU side, I don't know. they're competitors, so you don't like to lose. But the defense also an issue over there, and we thought it was going to be with how much they like had to replace. Like, you lose an Elijah Roberts and you lose an Ahmed Walker. Like, there's just a lot of guys up front to replace, and it doesn't look like the Ponies are going to be as good defensively.
I think this one hurts for SMU because you were the better team for 3.5 quarters and you lost the game. And this also takes away any margin of error you have in your ACC schedule. That is already a lot harder this year with Clemson and Miami and teams like that, because last year the BYU loss was kind of sky is falling moment and no one realized, okay, BYU is a Big 12 championship contender, but then they were able to run the table because they missed Clemson and Miami. Now you've got those teams coming in, and early season they look pretty damn good. So it just took away your margin for error, and it sucks because you were the better team here for 3.5 quarters.
It does seem like it's going to have to be one of those old school SMU teams that is kind of their stereotype. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to have to win a lot, like what we just talked about, Baylor winning. And it just feels like one of those, like the revolving, they had loaded up with so many Miami guys and Georgia guys and just big time former recruits that maybe hadn't worked out at their previous stop. They just had high ceilings and a lot of size, a lot of athleticism. I'm just not sure they replaced those guys with the same type of bodies and the same type of like high end ceiling. And so they're going to have to outscore teams. And I think they can a lot of times. I think with Kevin Jennings, that offense, some of those young receivers looked really good. Like Jalen Cooper had a great game. Romello Brinson was good. I think they found a running back one in TJ Harden. So offensively with Rhett Lashley and what they do, like they're going to score a bunch of points. I think Scott Simons is one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. I'm assuming this is going to get better throughout the season, but how much can it improve before that TCU game? And like they're going to see an offense that can be as explosive as they saw against Baylor in a couple of weeks in a big time rivalry game. And they risk being, 2-2 going into ACC play.
I don't know how much I worry about this SMU team on defense because of Scott Simons though. And because I think Baylor might be the best offense in the Big 12. Like legit.
It might be. Yeah. This might be a Baylor story. This might be a Baylor offense. Like Sawyer Robertson is like Heisman finalist type of guy, like that. That may be what this is, but SMU's rise was quietly about balance, was quietly about complementary football and the offense figuring out a way to help the defense and the defense figuring out how to get the personnel in there to make SMU very good at defense. Because this is probably, I don't want to derail the podcast. I think offense in a lot of ways is about scheme. Defense in most ways is just about dudes. Like
I get behind that.
You just got to go stop people. You got to be good enough to stay with wide receivers. You got to be big enough to stop the run. Like you can do stuff schematically, especially early in the game. But like eventually, it's like we'll talk about this with UTSA, Texas State. It was 2-0 after the first quarter because the defense has schemed some stuff up. But eventually, the offense is going to adjust, and there's not much else you can do. And you either have the Jimmies and Joes or you don't. And neither of those defenses did. I think that's true about SMU. I think the players that they lost are better than the players that they returned. And Scott Simons can cover some of that up, but against teams like Baylor, who also have schematic gurus on the other side of the ball, if that is even, it just comes down to who's got the guys. And I just don't think SMU's defense has the guys in comparison to what they had last year. That was a really good defense.
The one devil's advocate is they didn't have Alexander Kilgore yesterday, but I agree with you. I don't know how much of a difference one guy makes when you've lost your entire defensive front seven, basically. And I also agree that their front four guys took a step back in the reload process this year. All right, let's go to Texas State and UTSA. Game of the year candidate, I think a lot. I mean, Baylor SMU was a banger. So was this one. Texas State, Craven, you wrote, dethrones UTSA as the G5 Giants with a 43-36 win. GJ Kinney is now 2-1 over his mentor, Jeff Traylor. And Texas State, it's on his way to the Pac-12, which is going to compete with the AAC as the best non-P4 conference. It looks like Texas State's ascending and UTSA is plateauing, maybe. Let's start on the Texas State side, though.
Yeah, on the Texas State side, I guess the first thing that jumps out to me is how good GJ Kinney is at talent evaluation. And at this level, at the G5 level, where it's such a revolving door, that is more and more of like the top 2 or 3 traits I would want in a head coach. It used to be about culture and program building, and everything's such a 1-year deal now that I just don't know how much of that is true anymore. Maybe at the P4 level where you can pay to keep your roster intact, it is maybe more about that. But for a team program like Texas State, that the roster is going to be brand new a lot more often than it's not. Give me a guy that can just get into the portal and figure out some dudes that are overlooked and underpaid that can come do some stuff at Texas State. They just have guy like Bo Sparks. Like, what the hell is that?
Is he the best wide receiver in the country right now? He's got 12 catches for 237 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
Nobody wanted Brad Jackson. Like, he had some Ivy League offers and like Sam Houston, a couple like option teams or whatever. Like, and to take that group and go and beat what I think is a pretty solid UTSA football team, and for their level, right? I'm overly impressed with Texas State, and I guess I see what UTSA was 4 years ago. Like, this is what these are the vibes and the feelings and just the images you got in UTSA 2021 when it was like, holy crap, the Roadrunners are about to be like legit, not just like solid. Like, they're going to be legit. Like, this is a program to really watch. That is not just a one-hit wonder that is going to be here to stay. They have something brewing. They won games like Texas State wins them now, right? Like, they just feel like that kind of program. And that's why I said a torch was passed on Saturday night. It felt like one team handing the baton off to the next one. And college football's, I mean, Texas State was 2-0 last year and ended up 7-5, right? So like, we may think differently at the end of this football season, but it just very much felt like teacher becomes master. Texas State kind of takes over UTSA as that spot of kind of the king of the G5, and they did it with a pretty solid effort. Like, Brad Jackson's performance in that game was pretty unreal.
But this is the growth I want to see from GJ Kinney, because we've seen these hot starts with Baylor in year 1 and with UTSA last year when they beat them 49-3. But I think all of us in year 3 of the GJ Kinney era have questions about if they can maintain that early season level in the back half of the 6 games. But I totally agree with you on the talent evaluation. Let's call him Big Play Brad Jackson. I mean, 23.8 yards per completion. And I saw this crazy stat. 247 of Texas State's 454 yards came on 4 plays.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So here, this is what I mean. Like, UTSA always wins these types of football games. 29-3 at home. Traylor was 12-4 in one-score games from 21 to 23. Like, they thrived off of these. Like, 'cause in the press box while we're watching it, you're like, this looks like that UTSA Western Kentucky games with Bailey Zappi and Frank Harris. And UTSA just came out on top of those. And when they tied the game up, they scored the touchdown, they get the 2-point conversion, and it's 36-36 with like 10 minutes left. And you're like, well, this is how it goes, right? Like, here's the Roadrunner zombies. They're just going to figure out a way to scratch this game out. They're going to stay on top, blah, blah, blah. And then the next time Texas State took like 10 seconds later, Brad Jackson hits Bo Sparks for like 70 yards, touchdown, lights out, game over. Like, it was just punching the bully in the mouth, and Texas State's the bully now. And that type of fearlessness from coaching staff and quarterback is impressive in that environment where only two teams have beaten UTSA in the Alamo Dome during Traylor's era. One of them is Houston with Clayton Tune when they were really good, and that was in like triple overtime. The other two are Army. And for those who don't understand what San Antonio is, Army's not the road team in those football games. And so to go into that environment, to beat a solid team with a redshirt freshman quarterback and the way that you did it, and to take their best punch and to knock them right back out, the 4th and goal stand from the 1-yard line early in the game set the tone. That big play at the end kind of drove the nail into the coffin. I honestly don't think I can say enough things like how impressed I am with like Kinney's regime and what Texas State's becoming.
So let's take it over to the UTSA side now, too, because I loved your 3 thoughts after the game when you're mentioning the 1-score game record for Jeff Traylor in those first 3-4 years he was there, 12-4 and they won 2 conference championships, were 1 game away from winning a third in 2023. Since then, they're 1-4. And this is not an easy question to answer, but why are they no longer winning those coin flip games, do you think?
To me, it looks like discipline. And I don't know if that's leadership from, they're lacking leadership, like a Rashad Wisdom, a Frank Harris. Maybe we make too much of that. Like, I don't know. I've never been in a high level locker room, like on a college stage like that. So I don't know if it's a coaching. It just feels small. Like they used to not drop balls in big key moments. And they did that multiple times. They did that multiple times against Texas State. They used to not make the boneheaded pre-snap penalties. They did that multiple times against Texas State. They used to get off the field on big 3rd and 4th downs. Instead, they're penalizing people and grabbing jerseys. Like they can't cover anybody. And so like, if you have no defense, like they used to, like UTSA was never Alabama defensively. Like I think to our conversation earlier about it just being about the dudes, I think at the G5 level, you typically just give up a decent amount of points. Like that's just life at that level. The offenses are more advanced than the defenses. The coaches typically are offensive guys rather than defenses at like the head coaching level. But they had some edge rushers and they had some secondary players that sniffed the NFL or played in the NFL or got transferred to Oregon or Texas. I just don't think they have those guys anymore, especially in the secondary. You mentioned it earlier. Texas State averaged 23.8 yards a completion.
Not good.
UTSA had to like fight for everything. Like it was a struggle to get down the field. Like they scored points and they were better than Texas State's defense. They scored 36 points. Like, and that was after getting blanked in the first quarter. They scored 36 points in the last, 2.5 quarters. But it just felt like in big moments where UTSA used to make the play, they're now the team that blinks. And Texas State was the team that made the play. And, some of that, maybe that's just what percentages are. Like maybe it was always going to spin the other way. And if you played it out 100 seasons, even with the same personnel they had previously, maybe UTSA would have ended up on the other side of these coin flips, regardless of what was happening. That's just how this goes. I think sometimes we like apply all this logic to like 1 game sample sizes. And if it happened 10 other times, it'd be 10 different results. And like, I think sometimes we're like, kind of grasping at smoke here when we're doing this, but it's hard to ignore the small margins and how UTSA used to win them with ease and dominance. And you just kind of figured that they would, to like, now they're the sloppy team. Now they're the team that makes some mental lapses, whether it be penalties or drops. And at that level, the difference between being Vince Lombardi and a fired coach isn't that much, like I remember being in Traylor's office multiple times, and you kind of ask him the question, how do y'all win all these 1-score games? And he would make the joke like, there's not a secret sauce to it. And I'm celebrated because I'm winning these games. But if I had lost half of these games, like they'd be trying to kick me out of here, and like now he's on the other end of that. And I think that's just how small the margins are. Like, I don't know.
I think though, there are random occurrences of year to year where you win all the 1-score games and the next year you lose all the 1-score games, like TCU in 2022 versus 2023. Mm-hmm. But UTSA over 3 years was winning all their 1-score games. So that points to me of there was a culture they had on that team. And I don't want to say totally past tense here, but I do agree with what you talked about earlier in our previews of UTSA this year, where Jeff Traylor is saying, we're some hungry ass dogs again, like we were when we got here. And I think from the very outside looking in, Frank Harris and Rashad Wisdom had a stranglehold on the culture of that locker room. And their discipline and accountability permeated throughout the team. And the best teams like that are player-led. But when it starts, it's got to be coach-led. And I think when they lost those guys, Jeff Traylor, he was navigating a new world of college football, a lot of transfer portal, and he thought his team was still more player-led than it is when he lost those guys. And now I thought they had it fixed against Texas A&M because they had 0 pre-snap penalties. And they played a really disciplined football game. And I felt really good about this UTSA team coming out of Texas A&M. That's why this one was disheartening. But I also think that was on me and the media for thinking in one offseason that could all be fixed. And there weren't going to be certain games where it's going to rear the ugly head again. Like, it is a long-term process. And that's just life in a G5 program where most of your biggest players are transferring year over year. For Frank Harris and Rashad Wisdom were anomalies.
They were there for like 6-7 years. And a lot of that roster had gotten there before that era, and they stuck it out, and they did it for quote unquote kind of the old school right ways. Right. And I just think what used to work no longer works anymore, especially at this level. And it's up to Traylor and that staff to adjust to it. And a couple of bounces go. You get that 4th and 1 stop or 4th and 1 touchdown on the goal line. You know, you don't get that safety on the bad snap. Like there's 4 or 5 plays that if you switch what happens, this game goes differently. And we're talking about how UTSA is still the king of the G5 and Texas State still playing catch up, and UTSA is about to go win the American, and you know, all this kind of stuff. Right. So it's not, I think, got blown out. It wasn't like the 2024 game. I think they're right there. It just, these games come down to a handful of plays, and UTSA used to always make those plays, and they are not right now. There's probably a bigger discussion on like, they're probably not as talented as they used to be, but I don't know if you can be as talented as they used to be. Like, you're probably not going to have it again at the G5 level unless you're like somebody like South Florida or Memphis with millions and millions of dollars, to have like a Sincere McCormick and a Frank Harris and a Zachary Franklin and a Spencer Buford. And that's just like on the offensive side of the ball, like on the same team. You're not going to be able to afford those guys anymore. You're not going to be able to get them in recruiting. You know, Frank Wilson was able to recruit against a Texas State that was hapless, that had no life. Like it's harder to acquire talent. You're competing against better teams now. So the margins shrink. It's, you know, you don't have any talent advantages anymore. You're not the old team. You're not the more talented team. It just comes down to a few handful of plays, and credit to Texas State for making them.
This is maybe me overthinking it too much too, but in the past few off seasons, it was like Jeff Traylor was the next guy to get the P4 job. And I feel like that's got to hurt recruiting a little bit, because recruits are like, I don't know if he's going to be there or not. Like, is that a way overthinking it, you think?
I don't know, because like they kept all their offensive guys. You know, like they've done a good job of like retaining talent and keeping it, you know, relatively, especially on the offensive side of the football. I think they've done pretty good recruiting and transfer portal. They've had to change the way that they do it, but I think that's just true everywhere. I just think the way that Traylor built the UTSA program into a juggernaut is no longer the way that you can build these football teams. And I'm not sure UTSA has they had the advantages in that. Like they were better at that than everybody else was. I think they're just like everybody else now because of the landscape changing. And some of those advantages are gone in terms of like how you build teams. And so it just comes down to what happens on Saturday. And they lost to a very good football team. Like Texas State's a really good football team. I think we figure out what UTSA is throughout the season, and then we can draw some bigger conclusions of what they are as a program.
I still feel so much better about 2025 Roadrunners than I did last year, because this time last year they were getting stiff-armed through the crust of the earth by Texas State, and we're 2-4 with two of the worst losses in the Traylor era. So like if he can get them to a bowl win after starting 2-4 with how bleak that looked last year, I still feel great about them even at 0-2 this year.
Yeah, I mean, they got Incarnate Word next. The trip to Colorado State's going to be pretty illuminating.
I think that's kind of a must win.
Right. That's going to be after that game. I think we can start having some, because this could be about Texas State. It's like when we're talking about Baylor SMU. I think as we get more data points, we'll realize what this was about. Because last year it was a precursor. You saw UTSA get blown out, and it was like, uh-oh, that ain't the Roadrunners that we're used to seeing. This one may be more about Texas State's ascension.
Mm-hmm. I think that could be definitely true. Let's take it now down through the rest of the state. Those were our two marquee games. But let's go to the SEC now with the Texas Longhorns. They defeat San Jose State 38-7, and literally no one is happy about it except for Parker Livingstone because he went off.
Yeah, is he wide receiver 1?
He's got to be. They're roommates, dude, and they were roommates.
That's my worry for Texas. Nothing against Parker Livingstone.
All due respect.
But we thought he'd be wide receiver like 3, you know, maybe even wide receiver 4 this year. And he's a very talented player. He's had 2 excellent games. But I'm just not sure they have the playmakers. And we kind of talked a lot in the offseason, not just you and I, but just media, national, statewide, regional, local, just about what Arch Manning is and what he is compared to Quinn Ewers, and if this offense is going to be better, how much. I just don't think they have as much talent around them. They got a tight end and they got a pretty solid 6'4" wide receiver that's got some good ball skills. They need Ryan Wingo to start getting towards the ceiling, and they need that offensive line to get better in pass pro.
My voice is a little shaky today. I'm sorry if y'all can tell that. It's from defending Arch Manning in Norman all weekend. I went there to visit my fiance's old stomping grounds, and literally it was from the moment I got off the bus, I was battling Oklahoma fans about Arch Manning because...
Did you win or lose?
I fought valiantly. Let's put it that. There's no convincing them, dude. Yeah. The Oklahoma fans yesterday, after beating, I'm going to say it, a mid-ass Michigan team with a freshman QB, so cocky. It was, I had a guy tell me he was booking his flight to Miami to go to the national championship.
To watch Ohio State win it?
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, Manning had 4 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown, and no one cares. And I don't blame them because I've said before, I don't care what he looks like until the Florida game, which that might not be. Right. No one cares about that one anymore either.
Right.
But I'm more focused almost on Arch Manning grimacing as he's throwing the ball and it dirts in front of Ryan Wingo than I am on the 4 touchdowns. We have Texas Twitter now zooming in on Arch Manning's face from games last year. Look, he always makes that face like he's taking a poop while he throws.
21 of their 38 points came off turnovers. The Longhorn defense forced 4 turnovers. And I just think that's the formula for Texas this year. This will be one of my 10 thoughts on Monday for that column that I do. But I think the dream of Texas being this offensive juggernaut, this explosive offense that was unlocked with Arch Manning's vertical passing game, those fantasies are done. That's just not what this football team's going to be. If they're going to reach the SEC championship, if they're going back to the college football playoff, if they really are national championship contenders, it will be because Texas's defense is stellar, is elite, turns opponents over, and the offense can be opportunistic and run the football. I just think it's good. They're going to have to win like an old SEC team. Steve Sarkisian needs to call Nick Saban and go, hey, how did you do it all these years? Because they need to be more disciplined, and they need to run the ball. They need to play defense. They need to score points off of turnovers, limit mistakes, and win games 24-17. That's how they have to do it.
It's I thought we had Matt Leinart. Instead, we have Jacob Coker. And how did you win the Natty? With all due respect to Jacob Coker, by the way.
Yeah, that offensive line worries me, not so much when they go forward run blocking, but pass pro. And they're going to see a lot better defensive lines than San Jose State. And it felt like San Jose State was in the backfield quite often. But yeah, wake me up on the road against Florida. I know they lost to South Florida and all that, but UTEP and Sam isn't going to tell us anything. It's just not.
The scary part is Texas probably should have been down 14-0 if they're playing a team with a pulse.
Right.
And they're not playing San Jose State.
Right. So I'm not going to take anything good or bad about Arch Manning and that offense until we see it against a team that pays their players, that has some people on their defense that are going to go pro in something that is football.
Yeah, my inside sources around the program, and by inside sources, I mean guys at the literally tippy top of DKR were saying that there were some calls for Trey time for Trey Owens in the stands, in the nosebleed section. So that's the check-in on Texas right now.
Yeah. Fun. It's good times.
Aside from the offense, the entire program, and I know the defense is great, but they're ranking 128th out of 136 in the nation in penalty yards per game at 82.5.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
So that's great. That's why I said Sark needs to call Nick Saban. He said it after the game. He's got to put his foot in their behinds. I think Sark is usually a player's coach who, we've seen him in his temper. He'll get after people. I talked to Jordan Whittington for the cover story, and he talked about, Sark being, pretty aggressive in practice and that. But I think he needs to lean on that. These next 2 weeks need to be about the whip, the stick, not the carrot, because it's pretty easy to get lackadaisical against UTEP and Sam. You're going to be favored by 35 plus points in the next 2 football games, but they got to clean up all that other stuff, because against Oklahoma, on the road against Georgia, those type of games, you're not going to win playing that way.
It's honestly similar to the Jeff Traylor thing at UTSA, where last year Texas's team was so senior heavy. As a coach, you got to know your locker room and like say, hey, you talk about Jordan Whittington in the early years when they're 5 and 7, right? How he was getting on dudes. It's like you got to do that when you first get there, but then you do need to back off a little bit when your team's in back-to-back college football playoffs. You got to let it be more player-led. Now it's that reset of here's a new crop of guys, and this year's team's not the same as last year's team. So,
yeah, I mean, he had Jordan Whittington, who, by the way, he got on for not caring enough about run blocking. Like, think about that. Like Jordan Whittington left here as one of the best run blocking wide. Like that's one of the things you would say Jordan Whittington does the best, right? And
first thing I think of,
right? And he like in 2021, he was getting his ass chewed out in practice because he didn't give a crap about run blocking, And so I think some of it's like the COVID year and all the washout. Like locker rooms got really old and they were around a long time, and I just don't think you have the Kelvin Banks, you don't have the Jordan Whittington, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. They have to find new leaders. Like new people need to step up for that. And I think that only happens organically.
Are we worried about Colin Simmons at all? Having 4 penalties through 6 quarters at one point.
I do think that he probably needs a conversation of like, we need you playing at that limit. And like, that's probably what makes you a great player, but you can't go past it. It's like a Ferrari, right? Like you got to stop when you're getting into the red or you're going to do more damage than good. I think he had a frustrating week 1. And he's trying to do too much, trying to be like the best player in college football, and he just needs to go play his football game.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right, let's go. Keep it in the SEC. Go to the rival Texas A&M. They outscore Utah State 44-22. Through 2 games, Marcel Reed has 66.1% completion rate, 509 yards, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and Texas A&M fans are taking a victory lap, baby. Was this y'all that said Marcel Reed couldn't throw? Guys, was that you?
Yeah, those 2 transfer wide receivers have been gold. Casey Concepcion with another 2 touchdown game. Mario Craver goes over 100 yards again. They ran the ball more against Utah State with some success. I feel like we can count on that part of A&M's offense. We'll see against Notre Dame in week 3. I think A&M in this SEC with Alabama down, Texas having some struggles, why not? Why not the Aggies? If the offense is this good, why can't the Aggies be in that discussion?
It's against UTSA, who we saw Texas State just shred, and Utah State. I do not care until Notre Dame. Taking the victory lap on social media right now for Marcel Reed's stats. I mean, credit to Mike Elko for spinning it around the yard to get Marcel Reed's confidence up. I like that strategy a lot. Craven, you had your tinfoil hat on. You knew about this. But guys, let's keep this in perspective.
For sure. But like, we have jobs in this industry because fans lack perspective.
Yeah, that's true.
Like this is what it's supposed to be. You only get 12 of these. You only get 12 data points.
I literally came on this podcast and was like, I'm all in on Arch Manning winning the Heisman after Ohio State. So who am I to judge? I get it, guys.
Yeah, that's what we should be. We need to lean into that more. You only get 12 data points through 1/6 of the season. Marcel Reed has been kicking ass. Do your dance. Maybe Notre Dame, it all comes crashing down, but maybe not. So get ahead of it. I've been impressed. You can only play who's in front of you. And Marcel Reed has looked better in these 2 games than he did against even bad opponents last year. That offense looks much more explosive. Those wide receivers look improved. The defense is where I kind of like still kind of raise my eyebrows a little bit on, but we'll find out more against Notre Dame, as you said.
Although Cassius Howell getting 3 sacks on 3 consecutive plays was insane.
Yeah.
Like, bravo.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, eventually, you got to triple team a guy, right? If he doesn't, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't fool me again. Like whatever. Yeah. George Bush, you can't let a guy do it 3 times in a row.
Fool me 3 times, like, dude, why you're getting fired on the tarmac, Lane Kiffin style? I mean, what's going on here? So yeah, that Notre Dame game. Look, if Marcel Reed comes out and throws for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and 0 picks, I'll come on here with the clown nose Josh Pate style. I'll eat it. But
it's on film now. I think that was what the important part was through 2 weeks, was to put enough on film to make Notre Dame respect that side of you. And I think if you're Notre Dame, you see those 2 wide receivers, you see Marcel Reed's tape the first 2 weeks, and you go, oh, we got to respect this. Like, we can't play 8 in the box and just load up against Le'Veon Moss in the run game. The Aggies are going to throw the ball, and those wide receivers can make plays and hurt you if they make one guy miss. I think that was the key to the first 2 weeks for Colin Klein's offense, and mission accomplished.
Okay, let's take it to the Big 12 now. Another rivalry game, intra-state, non-conference, mini rivalry game. The Bayou Bucket. Houston dominates Rice 35-9 in what is the final installment of this game for now. TBD on this. But I know it's SFA and Rice, Craven. But this Houston defense, second in the Big 12 with 4.5 points allowed per game and 186 yards allowed per game. BYU's allowing 1.5 points per game, who has BYU played?
Yeah, it's been fun watching Austin Armstrong's defense get after it. You just always assume a Willie Fritz football team is going to be sound defensively, tackle, football, rally to the ball, all that kind of stuff. They've been pretty explosive. But Rice was a good matchup to them. Like, if I worry about anywhere for the Cougars, it's not the front seven in the run defense. It's going to be that secondary that lost AJ Halsey, that lost Jeremiah Wilson, just some of those new faces they brought in the spring transfer portal window just haven't been quite tested yet. But so far, so we just talked about with A&M, like, you can only play who's on your schedule. Houston's looked really good. They looked really professional. I like what they've done offensively. Like, we talked about this in the offseason. Like, Connor Wigman got all of the press clippings, but this was never going to be a Connor Wigman is the whole playing offense. Like, this was going to be about running the football and establishing the line of scrimmage with 4 or 5 new starters through the transfer portal up front, play action, getting vertical. And we're starting to see that from Houston. So they got Colorado in week 3. Like, I think that they could be a 3-4-0 team before they play Texas Tech in week 5. Like, they're off to a good start. Like, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Cougs in year 2. I think they're still a year away from us putting them into like contendership, but we talked about this with Willie Fritz. You just wanted to see the ascension, and you're seeing it go up, and I think that's really good.
Well, this will be a really interesting game against Colorado coming up, and I think they'll have to face quarterback Ryan Staub now. Who did you see the post game with Dion that he had, where he was Ryan Staub? They asked him about like getting in the start of the game, and he was like, I just had a dream. Just want to, chase that dream. And Dion goes, Ryan Martin Luther Staub, basically, about his new quarterback. So Ryan Staub's got a dream to go beat Houston. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah. I think Houston's going to be a problem. I think that they're a team that they're going to beat a team or two and ruin their season. Like, I really believe that's going to happen. They got Tech, TCU, Baylor. Like, they're going to beat Arizona State. They're going to beat a team and keep them out of the Big 12 championship game, because that's what Willie Fritz does.
What do you make of this game going away? I don't mean to just tee you off here and like wind you up like a jack in the box, but I kind of do, I guess.
This one bothers me probably the least. Like TCU, SMU bothers me much more. I do understand that Houston and Rice have kind of gone their separate ways in terms of competitiveness. But I think it's changing. Like, with Rice and the American and rev share, I think the Owls are going to be better and better. I guess I see it as it's the superiority complex that bothers me in college football. Houston fans get upset that Texas thinks they're too good to play Houston, but then they turn around and they're too good to play Rice. Mm-hmm. And it's like, who is left to play? Like, who are you good enough to play? Who aren't you good enough to play? It's one of 12 games. Their campus is 4 miles away. If it's such an easy game, like, go take the win. You get to stay local. Every other year, one of your road games is 4 miles away in a stadium that's not going to be that full, that you're going to have just as much of a home field advantage as they do at Rice Stadium. Like, I don't get the downside for Houston. You lose once or twice a decade and you get some egg on your face. Like, don't lose. Like, if it's that, so I don't know. Play your rivals. It's good for the sport. It's good for the programs. It's good for Rice. And I hate I hate that this stuff goes away. It just bothers me.
It's a little bit of I don't know if cowardice is too strong of a word, but it feels like that a little bit. It's like, if you guys are so big and bad, then go beat them. Like you said.
You get on social media and it's like, well, they don't offer us anything. It's like, when do we start thinking this way as football fans? Like when I was growing up watching Texas play, when I lived in Austin, my grandfather worked for the team, like, and they're playing against Baylor, and Baylor's been bad my whole life. I wasn't like, Baylor doesn't offer Texas anything. Like, why is Texas playing Baylor? Like, because they're 60 miles up the road.
Mhm.
That's what you do, because you played them forever. Houston's played 2 teams over 40 times in the history of their football program. Rice and Tulsa. Like what? Like, they're your rival. You may not like it. Maybe it's not so even of a series anymore. But that's who your rival is. Just go play them. It's 1 out of every 3 non-conference games. Like, take the win and get over it. I don't know. It just seems
Also,
it's got a name. It's any game that's got a name for the trophy is important enough to keep playing. Like, I guess that's my stance.
But also, like, who is the recruit out there that is down to 2 schools and it's Rice and Houston?
Well, their worry is that, like, one, the coaches don't want to play games that get them fired.
Okay.
Right. And you lose to Rice, it can get you fired. Like, Dana Holgerson can tell you that, right? Like, people can start jumping ship like pretty quickly.
Well, also saying that they're not going to fire you. Have you seen my buyout? That'll
that helps too.
That and losing to Rice. Yes.
I don't think it's necessarily about losing a recruit to Rice. It's losing a recruit to a team that uses losing Rice against you.
Okay. But how is that not the same thing as Eastern Washington?
Agree.
Whoever's
Totally.
on schedule.
That's why it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all convoluted. Okay, let's take it to the American Athletic Conference now. Actually, no, never mind. We got another Big 12 team. I just snuck out right from under me.
We don't have to talk about Tech for very long.
Okay, we'll keep it brief, because that game, we'll keep it briefer than the amount of time that game was a game. Texas Tech throttles Kent State 62-14, back-to-back 60 burgers to start the season for the Red Raiders. And my biggest takeaway is Skylar Gill Howard on the thick six. The thick six. Happiest I've ever seen someone to score.
Moving. He was absolutely moving. Texas Tech typically doesn't have defensive linemen with that kind of size and athleticism. Like, that was one of those, like, illustrations of what you paid for plays. Like, oh, that's the type of athlete we went and got that we used to not get here in Lubbock. I think the offense is just incredible. Like, watching Mac Leftwich call plays is a fun thing to do. Baron Morton looked fine. He's been off to a great start. He played the first half of the game. Didn't get injured again. Stayed clean in the pocket. Wake me up when they go to Utah.
That Utah game. If they can just both take care of business next week. Yeah. Because Texas Tech plays Oregon State, who's 0-2, and their head coach, Trent Bray, just dropped an F-bomb on the mic in his sideline interview. Mm-hmm. So that's how it's going over there. Also, for Texas high school football fans, former Albany standout Adam Hill, 16 rushes, 127 yards, former Albany legend, back-to-back state champion. So.
Yeah, you got Baron Morton handing off to Adam Hill. You got Coy Aiken out there. Like, it's, West Texas tough.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's go to the American. Another just really intriguing game. Probably if I'm ranking my games here, third best game of the weekend. North Texas, 33-30 over Western Michigan. It's the first time in program history the Mean Green win a game despite never leading in regulation.
Yeah, they gave up 276 yards through the first 3 quarters and 32 in the fourth. To rally back.
Adjustments.
Okay.
What is that? I'm not used to those.
Again, this is in my 10 thoughts tomorrow. Complimentary football is a word that I know North Texas fans have not heard in a few years, but it's how you win football games. And that was a game that Morris in his tenure loses. When they're down 17-7, and it was like, at halftime, and it was like, the offense doesn't have it. Well, that equals loss for the first 2 years of North Tech. Like, you were done. You couldn't do it. You couldn't count on the defense to get a stop. But they bow up in the fourth quarter, which allows the offense to kind of figure it out, which Morris's offense always does. If you give them 60 minutes, like, they're going to start scoring points on you. They do their late rally, which has kind of been a staple, I feel like. Like, we think about a lot of these kind of North Texas games, like the offense just like starts getting into a rhythm. They go off in the second half, but they could never get the stops. And it wasn't a great defensive performance. Like, I'm sure if you talk to Skylar Cassidy, it's not like he's throwing up flowers for how great that defensive performance was. But when they needed it in the fourth quarter, which is about adjustments and coaching, when they needed it in the fourth quarter, they got it, they figured it out, and then they go and make a stop in overtime that gets their offense on the field. Touchdown wins the game. Offense goes, scores the touchdown, wins the game. Like, it was a season-saving type quarter and a half for North Texas. It keeps the vibes high. Now you come home and you're a favorite against Washington State. Like, this can be a really big season for North Texas. And we saw kind of why in that last quarter in overtime.
See, I mean, thinking back to that story you wrote about who's the best G5 team in Texas, and it's going to be a heated race for Texas State, North Texas, and UTSA. We'll see if UTSA can like go ascend towards the end of the year like they did last year too. And we'll again watch if Texas State tapers off like they did. But you're feeling some buzz right now about North Texas for sure.
And you would imagine both sides of the ball get better and better. First year defensive coordinator, you just imagine as they are with each other more, you watch more film, you kind of get more corrections that defense is going to improve. And then with a new quarterback, you just assume that offense is going to get cooking more. Morris will figure out what Mestemaker does the best and vice versa. And they kind of hone the offense that way. Like, I think we'll see the best of North Texas in October or November. And that hasn't really been true because they haven't made the adjustments defensively to get better ever. Like they've just been the same unit. And so, yeah, playing complementary football. They've always been good offensively. We've always joked if they could just get average defensively, they can contend in the American. It looks like they're going to start becoming more average to above average defensively. And in this league, I mean, I think they can go win it if the cards fall right, or at least get to the AAC championship because they don't play Memphis. They don't play Tulane.
Yeah, schedule breaks in their favor. And that's a very good point you mentioned about getting better as the season goes on because their quarterback just made his third start ever.
Right.
By the way,
right.
He didn't start in high school.
Right.
So.
Since he was a freshman in high school, he started 3 times. And so like you just imagine with a guy like Morris in his ear, what we see on October 7th is going to be much better than what we saw on September 6th.
Okay, let's take it down to Conference USA. UTEP decimates UT Martin 42-17. That's the exact type of game UTEP needed in front of 31,122 fans. I got it right here. Malachi Nelson throws 4 touchdowns. Hashawn Wilson, 117 yards in the score. Kenny Odom, 5 catches, 124 yards to score. Ashton Emery's 3 scores. It's fun, baby. This is what you wanted to see out of UTEP that you didn't get to see a lot last year. That is growth because last year they lost to an FCS team in the home opener.
Yeah, Blue Blaze offense, like that's what it's supposed to kind of look like. That's where the excitement comes from with Walden. Nelson with the big game. And you're right. Like, this is what you're supposed to do against that type of opponent. It didn't feel like the UTEP roster last year was much different than an FCS roster. Like it didn't seem like they were that much better than that team, but they were better. They were improved, and you saw it one year compared to the next. And I think that's the growth you're looking for the Miners.
Now this sets up a quarterback duel between Malachi Nelson and Arch Manning coming up, both 5-star QBs from the class of 2022.
That's true. That's a good one.
That's what everyone thought when they looked in their crystal ball.
That's what's so tough for these programs, right? It's like if you're UTEP, you really need to win this game. You got 31,000 in the Sun Bowl, which is a great audience for a G5.
The stand looks packed. Right. Yeah,
like
I saw pictures
great.
of
It's
it.
a great place to watch. Like you're riding high, you dominate, you win a big game. Hey, coach, what do you think about the Texas Longhorns? It's like, jeez.
Here's Anthony Hill, Superman punching San Jose State player to the ground.
Yeah. You like go and watch that film late that night or early Sunday, whenever the coaches kind of got to that. And it's like, congrats to us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Speaking of another team that'll have to play, Texas here coming up, Sam Houston falls 37-20 to Hawaii in a game that was only available to watch on the Mountain West app. There was no website or streaming devices you could watch it on. It was basically forbidden content. It was like you had to really try to get this game.
Yeah, I drove home. I got back from the Alamo Dome at probably 9:30-ish or so. Watched the end of the UTEP game, did some stuff for the power poll. And Lucille, my 6-month-old daughter, typically goes to bed around 7:30 or 8, and her first kind of wake window is like 1:30 typically is kind of when she's waking up. And so I was like, well, I could stay up and watch the same. I'm just going to nap for an hour and a half, and then I'll just watch it while I feed her, during that first. So that's what I did. I just kind of tuned in to like the mid third quarter, fourth quarter, when she woke up for her bottle. Backup quarterback on backup quarterback. Like it's just not good, man. It's just not the vibes are not good at Sam Houston. Third 17-point loss in a row.
Consistency.
Longo is supposed to be an offensive guy. I guess I expected the offense to be more exciting, like the offense to work, not for Sam Houston to be better than they are. Like I thought they'd be 0-3 or 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it'd look a little bit different. I thought it'd be because they couldn't stop anybody because they had so many new defensive faces and they're just losing games because they're giving up 40 points. But they just have no offensive rhythm. Hunter Watson wasn't dressed out, but then he was for the final 3 minutes of the game. So that's kind of an odd thing.
His armor at the very end of the game.
I'm sure we'll figure out more of that as that kind of, as he gets his availability on Monday with Longo and stuff. But just kind of weird vibes out of Sam Houston. You go from a 10-win season and everybody's riding high, and look how they've adjusted the FBS to just not even really knowing what that program is, what it's going to be, and if they're going to get the support they need to succeed. And so I think there's a lot of existential questions for Sam Houston on and off the football field.
I'm not inside the locker room. From the outside looking in, it feels like Phil Longo wants Mabry Matoyer to take this job so bad, and he is trying to get Mabry to open up the offense and throwing him in there. And Hunter Watson is inactive for whatever reason, but then obviously he wasn't that hurt or maybe he actually, I would expect Hunter Watson to get suited back up with a broken leg.
Right.
He get in the game. So,
yeah. Who knows? It's just, and that's the other part too, is typically, I don't know. Typically there's more of there's people that cover the team that can help you get some messaging out, and Hunter Watson's hurt or banged up, he's not going to play against Hawaii, and you have some folks that you can leak that news from right before kickoff, so you don't have the fan base wondering what the hell is up, and it's fine to keep everything in house and to be very insular, but it causes a lot of paranoia, and it doesn't allow you to set the narrative. And if I was to critique the Phil Longo era so far, it's not the football side, because I think most rational folks knew the football side was going to be an uphill battle. It's been just a lack of back and forth and just narrative setting and controlling the messaging and getting out in front of some of these things, setting the expectations and being a little bit more jovial and knowing it's going to be kind of a rough year. So let's integrate ourselves in the campus and with the students and with the alumni base. And, let's be above board on what's happening with our program and where we're at, where we're going, and who's playing and who's not. So far, it hasn't been that way. And I think some of that's inexperience as a head coach. You're swimming, a lot's going on. You're dealt this insanely rough hand. You don't get hired for 22 days after the portal opens. You lose so much defensively. You're putting in a whole new offense. You're traveling to Hawaii and Oregon State and Western Kentucky. You're the third most traveled team in the country. You don't have a home field.
Your former head coach is saying on record how the AD told him to get another job.
Right. And I feel like Longo could get in front of the cameras and build on that story and set that expectation and be it about the future and excited about the future. And we're going to give Mabry Matoyer a chance because Hunter Watson's banged up. We need him for conference play. We're not going to ruin him in Hawaii. This is Mabry's game. You say that on Wednesday or Thursday, and people are excited to see the next quarterback. But instead, it's what's going on? Where's Hunter Watson? Is he on the sideline? Is he not? Is he dressed out? Oh, he's getting dressed out with 30 minutes left in the game. There's just a lot of weird stuff. A lot of unforced error, media, public relations stuff. And I think that's important, especially early in a tenure. You saw what Scotty Walden did at UTEP, right? That's how you attack a no-win situation with a fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Abel's been doing it right, that's how you do it. It just doesn't feel like Longo has picked up that part yet, and that allows the social media and the message boards and everybody to start creating their own narratives. And you never want those. Those are never good for you.
It makes me think back to my trip to Huntsville for the magazine. By the way, Longo was talking about how much he was so happy to have the job. He if he retired as Sam Houston's head coach, it was awesome. He's had a great life. But he told a story about Casey Keeler, and he did not mean this in a derogatory way, but he was basically I'm a different head coach than Casey Keeler in the sense of Longo is really about the schematics. Mm-hmm. And Casey Keeler was more of a CEO, and he tells a story about how Casey Keeler one time went in the offensive meeting room and was like, hey, let me show you this play. and he drew it up and he was like, what do you think? And Longo was like, hey, there's 12 guys on the board. And Keeler just threw the marker up and like walked out of the room, never went in the offensive meeting room again. But Casey Keeler was really good at that PR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was a really good CEO. And that's stuff you get from experience as a head coach at Rowan, as a head coach at, where was he, at Delaware too? Yeah, just head coaches, all these different spots. That Longo is more of a career coordinator and he just doesn't have that experience yet.
Yeah, because as a head coach, you can hire guys to do the X's and O's, but as a head coach, you can't hire guys to do your public relations. And a lot of the job in college football is public relations, and that's especially true early in your tenure when you're not very good on the football field. Because if you're winning 10 games a year, who gives a shit about public relations? Like, your public relations is winning. Mm-hmm. But you're not there yet. You haven't established that yet. You knew this was going to be a tough year. At least I feel like you had to. You can make it easier on yourself by integrating yourself into kind of media and the local fan base in a way that I just think he has missed the spot on. Because, and to his, like, I don't think it's like Longo, like, not doing it on purpose. I think there's so many other things on the ship at the same time. Like, what do you concentrate on? True. And to your point, he's a football guy. Why wouldn't you concentrate on the football? Like, that's what he would say, right? Like, I don't have time for it. Like, look how bad we are. Like, we got to get better. Like, I got to get this team better. But it's the holistic vision of being a head coach that is different than being the coordinator. And I just think that's a learning process, and he's on the job learning.
Yep, 100%. All right, that's going to do it for all the games, week 2 recap. Craven, I know you got your 10 thoughts coming out. It'll be out today when this podcast airs. But any other closing thoughts on this week 2?
No, a really fun week, a good week. Power 4 teams in Texas, I think, are 10-4 through the year. And one of those 4 losses is like to one of the others, you know, with SMU losing to Baylor. So SMU drops out of the AP. Texas was 7, A&M 16, Texas Tech 21. So 3 teams ranked in the AP poll right now.
And one right there, probably.
Yeah, TCU, SMU kind of right there. I think the winner I think the winner of that game probably propels itself back up. Baylor now with some momentum. Maybe if they beat Arizona State or something like that, that propels them back up. So, North Texas, Texas State at the G5 level. So starting to kind of see who the contenders are going to be, who the pretenders are going to be. I think that's the most fun part about non-conference. Yeah, and we got a couple more weeks of non-con before we then go into the meat of conference play. We got you covered for it all. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for our week 2 recap, and we will see y'all Wednesday to preview week 3.